For the third year and counting, Richard Skipper has been celebrating the artists you love.
And what are some of the things that you've really
run out of time, and we've got to talk about your latest. I want to go back a little bit, first of all, and celebrate a true legend.
Richard Skipper is all about celebrating life, art, and his guest body of work.
And did you pursue performing opportunities while you were in high school?
Please join us while he showcases these diverse and talented individuals. Here's Richard Skipper.
Happy Saturday, everyone. Who and what are you celebrating today? Welcome to Richard Skipper Celebrates. There's so much to celebrate. I celebrate life. I celebrate art. I celebrate artists. I celebrate Chip Deffaa, who I'm dedicating this show to today, because he said I should have, and he's right, Michael Townsend Wright on our show today. And he's here. He's waiting in the wings. We had a little technical difficulty getting him here, but he's here. And, you know, Michael is one of those very special people who is the walking edification, is that the right word, of vaudeville. Sometimes I used to think that perhaps I was born in the wrong era, because I have such a love of the old era of show business. But then I realized that, no, I believe I was born exactly when I was supposed to be born. And I say this because I have a great appreciation for what was. When I was a kid, and I've talked about this before, I had a great mentor, Miss Florence Theodora Epps, in my hometown of Conway, South Carolina. And she instilled in me that every time I stepped on stage, every time I stepped in front of a camera, that I carry with me the mantle of every great artist that has ever gone before me. And I think about that before every show. And Michael, I'm sure, agrees with me. And we both carry with us all of these great artists on our shoulders and in our hearts. And Michael has had the great opportunity to not only share the stages with some of these great artists, and we're going to talk about some of those today, but he carries them through with the work that he does, not only with Chip Deffaa, but in his own corner as well. So, Michael, first of all, welcome to the show today.
Thank you.
I'm so thrilled that you're here. And before we go any further, I want to ask, who or what are you celebrating today?
Well, first of all, Richard, I'm celebrating that you are such a good sport that you're so patient with me a few minutes ago. We were just saying off stage here that it was like running on stage at the very last second, which is what happened. And you're a young man, Richard, but I'm getting too old for that kind of excitement, believe me.
Oh, no. I will tell you, I will, well, I'll share a story with you.
Yes.
Speaking of which, as I think you know, years ago, I used to perform as Carol Channing.
Yes.
And I had a gig in Washington, D.C., and I was on my way getting ready to do the show. And just as I was getting ready to walk up the door, I get a phone call from a friend of mine in Washington who could not make it to the show. Yes. So she's calling to apologize to me that she can't go. And so now my husband says, I'm going to go get gas in the car. I'll just pick you up when I get back. Now, in the meantime, I had been putting costumes, wigs, everything in the car. And so when he came back, I said, well, I got to go. I'm going to get in the car. And we were halfway into our trip. And I went, oh my God, I forgot to put my costumes in the car. Now, we are halfway to Washington, D.C. at this point. And it's not like I can walk into a dress shop and pick up what I need for the show.
Of course.
So we turned around, we came back, we got our costumes. It's pouring rain. We're lost. We get lost. We are on the, the turnpike. We are, everything that could go wrong went wrong. I literally called the theater. I said, I don't have time for a sound check. I don't have time for anything. I'm putting my makeup on in the car. I went in, I did the show. You do what you have to do. You go on.
It happens. Well, I have to tell you, Richard, two things scare me. Performing never scares me. I'm such a ham. You know, the people that get literally sick before they go. I never get nervous performing. I think it's because that's my own little world. I'm safe. I don't know. It's real life. I'm quite shy. However, two things do scare me: not getting to the theater on time and not hearing my cue. Those are the only two things. The performing is a breeze, but not getting, stuck in traffic or what happened to you kind of thing, that terrifies me a little. Or not hearing my cue backstage or something.
Have you ever had what we in the business refer to as an actor's nightmare?
Absolutely. It's funny you say that because I was in a play. As you know, when you're in a play, it's the most satisfying thing, theater, but it's the most difficult and the least financially rewarding sometimes. But it's the most rewarding for an actor, an artist, as you know. However, it's so intense because one of Chip's shows, Irving Berlin's America, it was myself and the young actor. Several of them played it, all great actors. But most of the lines were mine because it's 2.5 hour show and 25 songs. And most of the lines are mine because the young man has a great part, but mostly it's then what happened, Mr. Berlin. And then I have another 3 pages.
Yes.
So, and of course, as I say, when you're over 21 and a half plus tax, it gets a little harder. I used to be a very fast study, but it gets a little more difficult as time goes by. And so it's a burden on you. But it wasn't even that show that I had an actress. It was years before. And it is a burden to remember all your lines and, to be there for all the actors. And so one night I woke up in bed, thought, oh, I'm late. I'm missing my cue, as we said before. And I put on my I was like walking in my sleep. I put on my bathrobe and opened my bedroom door as if it was the Wings. That's so crazy. And all of a sudden it hit me. Wait a minute, this is my house. What am I doing? But that's how intense it can be. And another time, it happened one other time, I'll tell you. I was having one of those vivid dreams. It seemed so real. And I was on a stage and you could hear the murmuring of the audience out there, behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the kind of curtain that raises. And so the other actors like, quiet. The curtain's going to go up. They blink the lights even, to tell the house to be quiet and to sit down. And the curtain's going up and I'm looking around me at the actors side by side. I said, excuse me. They said, shh, curtain's going up. I said, you better just listen to me. Not only do I not know who any of you are, I don't even know what show this is. Oh. So that was my dream.
Well, I had a dream that I was appearing at Radio City Music Hall, believe it or not. Why I had this dream, but and the music started and I'm hearing my vamp and the music was playing and the lights went up and I'm standing on stage and the vamp is going and the vamp was going and the vamp was going and the audience is cheering and I couldn't remember the first word of the song that I was supposed to sing. And I woke up in a sweat. Why, and of course, because of COVID and everything, I haven't even appeared on a stage in a performance mode in the last couple of years. How has COVID affected you as far as performing? Have you been able to perform in the last couple of years?
A couple of times I did at a private events. There was an outdoor event and I did part of my little act, just a small segment of it. My act is pretty much everything I've ever done thrown together. Songs, pantomime, impressions can put into an act. It can be an hour. This was just about 15 or 20 minutes. And I did that, but very little. Most things have shut down. It's slowly beginning to open up again. But many of the things I do, haven't been happening.
Well, just for the fun of it, I have this little game I like to play, and it's called the Icebreaker Game. Okay. And not that you and I need an icebreaker.
No, we've been through the icebreaker.
We're off
on the air.
We're off and running already. And it's a random question that I haven't even looked at. So God only knows what I'm about to ask you. But the question is, well, here we go. What is your worst habit?
I think, well, there's so many. How can I choose? just ask my friends. I think, well, there's so many. One of them is I tend to interrupt. I don't mean to before the person's finished. I'm already racing ahead to what the conversation is. That's very rude, and I'm trying to curb that. Another thing is I'm quite scatterbrained by nature, so you're going to have to be my referee and my ringmaster today and pull me back because I jump from topic to topic, but you're so good already, I can tell, at reining me in because I'm sort of scatterbrained that way because I love everything and I especially show business and talk about everything in the world all the time. So you're doing a great job of disciplining me already.
Well, thank you. I'm a great listener, and this is your story to tell. And anyway, and I just go with wherever you direct me. I want to let everyone know we got a couple of giveaways. Thanks to Chip Deffaa, we have 2 of your CDs that we're going to give away today. The 7 Little Foys,
Yes.
And you've already mentioned Irving Berlin's America.
Yes.
And that's not all. These are hot off the press. These are the new Richard Skipper Celebrates mugs.
Wonderful.
That we're going to give. So all you need to do, because the word for today is beauty. So I want to ask you, when you think of the word beauty, what comes to mind? When you think of beauty in the theater, what comes to mind?
I think of, we always heard of Lorette Taylor. They said most actors who were alive at that time, even in her latest show, the Glass Menagerie, say she was by far the greatest actor. And, she auditioned for MGM and they dismissed her immediately. They didn't think she was an actor. They thought she was an old woman off the streets or something because she was so natural. And that was pure beauty, I'm sure. I mean, I've seen her clips and things, but I've never saw her on stage, of course. But beauty in the theater, it's when I see an artist at that moment, or the moments it even happens in my life a little bit, it's from somewhere else. And I can't explain it, though that magical something. I mean, there are many people technically perfect, they make no mistakes and they're absolutely perfect, but they don't necessarily have that spark. Sometimes people without the greatest voice or the greatest looks or the greatest anything just have a magic. I always use Jimmy Durante as an example. He wasn't even a great piano player, really. Kind of pounded on the keys. Certainly couldn't, if you call it singing. His looks, he wasn't exactly a leading man. But yet, who could be more magical than Jimmy Durante? I always use him as an example, bigger than life. You're speaking of Carol Channing. I worked with her just once. I used to be part of a doodah parade in Ocean City, New Jersey, and they always have a celebrity, what do you call it, the head of the parade there, Grand Marshal, I guess. Grand Marshal, and she was there one year, so wonderful. And we had nice chats. And I have to tell you something funny, Richard, that you'll understand. I said, as far as I'm concerned, there's 3. There's Zero, you, and Merman. And you know what she said to me? Oh, Merman, huh?
That sounds
you
like
understand that.
That sounds like something she would say. There was an intense rivalry between the 2 of them.
Yes.
That went on for years and years and years. And speaking of Channing and Durante, interestingly enough, when Carol Channing first went to Las Vegas to do her first show, her first nightclub act, in those days, Las Vegas was a 24/7 town.
Oh, yes.
And Jimmy Durante, believe it or not, used to perform. Are you ready for this, everyone? 4 a.m. And he used to pack them in every morning because people were gambling. There was no time.
They don't have clocks, I don't think.
There were no clocks. Nobody wanted to follow him.
No.
Carol Channing said, I will follow him because all I need to do was to step into the love, because she felt that all the work was already done for her. All she needed to do was just to step onto the stage because the audiences would love her.
And that's the beauty you're speaking of.
But that's the beauty. That's exactly right. Have you ever worked in the casinos?
Yes, I did do. Oh, absolutely. With Danny Curtis, who was a veteran stand-up. He used to work at Dangerfields years ago. with Rodney Dangerfield at his club, and he played piano, and he's a great stand-up. In fact, he's just written a play that we're getting going. It's actually a musical called Final Day about, I'm sort of a semi-comedic character, but also get serious. It's, believe it or not, the last day of World War II in a prison camp. It sounds, what kind of musical is that? But it's very nice, and he's getting that going. But anyway, he and I were part of a Bob Hope tribute. And wait till you hear this, Richard. It was at Caesar's Palace in the gigantic, and they bust in all these people, most of them of a certain age, you might say, but they filled up the place. And that's a humongous hall there. And I remember we were backstage, a tremendous backstage, and they had people giving us food and ironing the clothes for us and all. There was a young lady in the show too, Rebecca, and playing the Dorothy Lamour character. And we said, boy, we're getting such treatment here. And they said, we're so happy to have you because we don't get many shows anymore. And even when headliners come, and this is about 10 years ago, even when headliners come, they used to be here for weeks. Now they may be one night, you know, share for one night or something. So they were so thrilled to have a show. We did a Bob Hope review. And, you know, I was sort of the Bing Crosby, he was sort of the Bob Hope, a tribute to them. And the girl was like Dorothy Lamour. And we did songs and sketches, some of their humor, but we filled up the that whole Caesar's Palace audience there. Not that it's a tribute to us especially, but they had already bussed them in, you know. It's a sure thing when you get the buses. So that was fun.
It was great. I was lucky enough. I did 3 long-running shows in Atlantic City. And the interesting thing about, I performed with Pudgy. I don't know if you remember Pudgy. Great comedian who went all too soon. And she said to me early on in rehearsals, if you can perform in the casinos, you can do anything, because the audiences are thinking of one of 2 things.
Yes.
How much money they've just lost, or how much money they're going to win after the show is over.
That's right. It's a tough crowd, as they say.
That's where they're focused on. But I want to go back. I asked you about a sense of beauty, and I want to talk about something that I think is absolutely beautiful, and I'm going to bring it up on screen. And that's this picture here. And obviously, you haven't changed a bit. Look at you.
There's no hope for me.
Yeah, no. Only up from there. This little cowboy. You know, obviously, I mean, you're very young, but do you have any recollections of this little boy here?
I do.
Yeah, tell us about him.
Well, in many ways, I still relate to him. And it's funny you say that, because he had the wonder of life that I still have.
That's great.
In a way. And you know something? I feel very protective of that little boy, in a way. I don't want to let him down somehow. Isn't that a strange thing to say?
No, not at all. Not to me. I asked for a young picture because I want to go back. I think it's a great time before life starts to put layers on you.
Yes.
Before school starts, before you start becoming what your fellow students want you to become, what teachers start telling you you should be,
Absolutely.
what you shouldn't be. And I want to go back to that little boy. Do you have brothers and sisters? Tell us a little bit about your home life at that age.
I have an older brother who's 10 years older than me. And he was very good. He took me to the movies and, you know, did things with me and all. And we're still close. We talk on the phone. I still live in that house, believe it or not. I still live in my family home.
Wow.
When my parents passed away some years ago, I took my half of the inheritance and purchased the house for my brother. So I still live here because I don't know, I feel attached to it, and the neighbors are great. I've known many of them all my life, although as the years go by, you don't have to leave home. Eventually new people, and they're wonderful new people. But even if you don't leave home, eventually home leaves you, because it changes, you know, the life changes and the world changes. But I just feel grounded here. And because I chose a life of performing, which is
Now,
not
do you
easy.
live in New Jersey? Is
I
that
do.
that's your home? And
An hour from Manhattan.
did you grow up in a household that was an arts-filled home, or where did your love of the theater and the arts first begin?
I don't know exactly, but right literally from the beginning, I mean, that's who I was right from the start, literally from the start. You know, in those days, although I have to tell you kind of a poignant story in a minute, but in those days, they put you in front of the TV as soon as you came home from the hospital in one of those little seats, and the
Mhm.
TV was your babysitter. So I think I was fascinated by the Ed Sullivan. And I have to tell you, the first thing I ever remember understanding, I mean, I remember the Mickey Mouse Club, I remember everything, but the first complicated thing I remember was Gracie Allen when the show
Mm.
was still on, the very tail end, first run. And I watched it. My parents would watch it, and I was watching it, and I understood Gracie. I remember she was in Blanche's house because I remember the knickknacks on the thing there. And I said, I understand what Gracie's saying. It was like an epiphany. That was the moment I understood. I guess I was about 2 or so, maybe less, but I understood it. I had to be. It ended in 58. I was born in 56, so I had to be 2 at the most. But that was a great thing. But the poignant story I was going to tell you is my parents were not in show business. My mother was a registered nurse for many years and then became director of welfare in our town. Very compassionate things. She was a very compassionate lady. And my father's a very good man, construction of all things. And I worked with him for many years because if I wanted to be an actor and stay in this house, I had to help, you know.
Mhm.
And I had the skill of a cement block. I think I wasn't good at it, but he was patient with me for the most part.
Good for him.
But
Good
they
for you.
both knew who I was, but they both worried about me because it's a very precarious profession, a very impractical profession. And they worried about me. But just before he passed away, I said, well, maybe I should get some kind of job. Maybe I should do some. He said, no, Michael, you're an actor. And that meant an
Wow.
awful lot.
He acknowledged that. That acknowledgement means a lot. That's great.
Like a blessing almost.
So, when you were a kid before school, did you have
Yes.
a very well? We saw the photograph. There you were dressed as a cowboy. Did you have a vivid imagination? Were you a play actor? Were you acting out a lot at home?
Absolutely. And I was a year and a half in that photo. But when I was 3, I began uh, in the yard. I still live here. Puppet shows, complete puppet shows for the neighborhood children. And I referred to them as the neighborhood. That's how ridiculous I am. I referred to them as the neighborhood children. And they would come and sit in the seats. And I did full puppet shows with my puppets. And the following year, for Christmas, all I wanted was a puppet stage. And they got me, or Santa got me, in case children, but the puppet stage. And I was thrilled with that. And so I got a little high class at that point. I was 4 then. And
Wow.
then I went from there to performing, being asked to perform at churches, a little church here, Bayview Presbyterian, and then VFWs and political events and school events, doing my act, impressions, singing, right from the start. So there's never been a
So your
doubt
mom
about
and
it.
dad were encouraging at that point.
They were, because they knew there's nothing they could do about it. That's who I was.
Good for them. Good
So
for
they
you.
wished me the best. Always worried, because the world can be a tough place, as you alluded to before. It
Mhm.
can be a tough place.
And what was the response that you were getting from your fellow classmates as this was going on? I mean, it can also be tough for a kid who is being in the spotlight. There can be rivalry, there can be jealousy. What kind of response were you getting from the kids in school with you getting this kind of attention?
I have to tell you, uh, almost 99 and 9/10% uh, wonderful.
I love that. That's
And they
great.
still are, the people I knew all my life. Because I may be an eccentric character, but I'm their eccentric character.
Good for you and good for them.
And they were my friends. So, and I have to tell you another thing, Richard. This working class neighborhood, the best thing in the world that ever happened to me was growing up in this working class neighborhood. And the school, elementary school, Cliffwood Elementary School, had every color of the rainbow, every religion. So they were just my friends. So there was no shock to me when I encountered people of diversity, because they were my friends already, and
I was
I'm
listening.
very lucky that way.
I was listening to an interview the other night with Rosalind Kine, Barbara Streisand's sister, and
Yes.
she was talking, where did this division come from? She said that she remembers going to the movies and standing in line with, and someone, of a different race, a different background, a different religion standing in line. And then after the movie saying, why don't you come back to my house for a piece of pie? And their home was open to everybody. And I just don't understand how we've gotten so divided in this country. And I don't care what side you're on, politically. It's just such a shame that we've gotten there.
I always figured friends are friends, period.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as you're doing these performances and you're doing, was there an arts program in your school that you were able to be a part of as well? Or was that all extracurricular for you?
That came later, really, in the school system, although they had plays, and I was in every one of them, right from kindergarten on, all the plays. That's about all there was in those days. There weren't any special programs or classes. And I wasn't really able to go even to a acting school or anything. Although in college I took acting classes and was in those shows.
So excuse me for interrupting, but were you didn't have any opportunities when you were in high school to do plays or anything?
Oh, yes, I did those plays. There was no, in fact, there were a couple of theater classes, sort of theater history and things like that, which I took, and also in college. And but no specific acting school. I never went to a specific, although, as I say, I've been working since I was a little boy, so you learn along the way quite a bit.
Learn the life of school of hard knocks, as they say.
Exactly.
So as you're going through school, and let's say junior high school, senior year,
Yes.
and you are starting to formulate what you're going to do as you graduate from high school.
Yes.
Was your mind already made up that you were going to go into show business?
Yes. I had been making the rounds in the city even as a kid. That's how I got to know Joe Franklin, because he thought it was remarkable this little kid was making the rounds. And in the cold winter days, I would go in his office because it was warm there. And he always had these unusual characters all over the place. And I loved the old stuff as he did. And so he was amazed by that. I'd say, how is Kate Smith doing, Joe? How is so-and-so? He said, well,
Back up for a moment.
yeah. Do you remember Joe?
Oh, Joe is a very dear friend of mine.
Yeah. So, I want to say, but and I used to be on his radio. Years later, it was his all-night radio show. And it's so funny.
How did you and Joe first meet? How did he become aware of the fact that you were making the rounds?
That was the way. I just went into his office. It was an open door, more or less. And he said, sure, sit down. And we would talk about, he was amazed that I knew about all these old timers for a little kid that I was, about 11 or so. And he was amazed that I knew all that. So we became friends. And he was quite a character. He would, and I would answer his phone while I was there. That's how I paid my way to sit down there. 2 phones. One would ring. I'd answer the other. He'd go like this, answer the other. I'd say, Joe Franklin's office. Who's calling, please? That was my routine. And if he said, Irving Schwartz, tell Irving Joe cannot come to the phone. There was that kind of thing. Tell him to call back 1 week from Tuesday at 3:37. Big special. And then he'd go like this, hang up. That was Joe. He was a unique and wonderful guy.
But I mean, how did the rounds start happening for you?
Well, in those days, you could go to agents' offices and sit there and wait. I wasn't signed at that time. I would sit and wait. Now they don't even let you in the door, agents. But in those days, you could sit on a bench sort of and wait and see if they had anything for you. And once in a while they did. So that's what happened. I joined the unions quite early and so forth. And But then I got my longtime agent a little later as a young man, Archer King, who passed away 10 years ago this year.
Wow.
And he was a legendary, he discovered James Dean and so many people. And he represented Ron Howard's father, Rance Howard.
Oh,
And
wow.
one day, Rance brought his little 4-year-old into the office. He said, "This kid is great. This kid is wonderful. Wait, let me get on the phone. He's wonderful. Great, great. Wait." Got on the phone with his casting agent friend who was casting a film that was going to shoot in Europe. And it was supposed to be 2 little boys. And they already had the little girl. He said, "Make it 2 boys. This kid is great." I mean, they already had another boy. "This kid is great, great." Ronnie Howard. And Ron remembers that happened, and it was his first. Oh, there's Joe.
There's Joe. I went searching on the internet to see if I could find a picture. I've got some great pictures of Joe and I together. I remember, first of all, his all-night radio program. Saturday nights, I couldn't go to sleep. I would listen to him all night long.
It was wonderful.
And I remember one night I was coming home from a gig, and he was on the radio, and he was looking for a song, and the lyric was "Take me back to the days of divorceless marriages and horseless carriages." And do you know the song?
I heard of it. I don't know it as well as you do.
And I went and I called him up and I said, "Joe, the song is When You Wore a Tulip." Judy
Yes.
Garland and Gene Kelly sang it in For Me and My Gal.
Oh, yeah.
He said, "Are you sure about that?" And I said, "Yes, I'm on my way home. And when I get home, I'm going to pull the album and I'm going to call you and play it for you." And he said, "If you do that, I'm going to send you a Baby Watson cheesecake," because that was his main sponsor.
Oh, yes. And Joey
So-
Reynolds had that too.
Yes.
Yes.
So I called him up and he sent me a Baby Watson cheesecake. And Joe Franklin, from that point on, we were joined at the hip. He came to my shows. He was always there. He was just the great, great friend. And to the day he died, I thought he was going to go on forever. And speaking of Joey, Joey Adams, I performed at his 85th birthday party at Le Cirque. And I want to talk about a cast of characters. Imelda Marcos, the Trumps were there, John Gotti.
Wow, an audience.
It was the most eclectic audience that you could possibly imagine. Just incredible. But
Joey Adams, you're saying, married to Cindy.
Yeah, yes.
Columnist
Cindy Adams used to book me for lots of parties. I performed when she launched her Gossip. But and unfortunately, because of technical glitches, I was not able to get it up. But you and I also have shared the stage with someone else that I want to talk about, and that's Tiny Tim.
Oh, yes. He was something? He was a very nice man.
Yes.
As you know. People don't realize, very gentle, kind man. And a lot of that was his act. I mean, he was eccentric, of course. But I brought him to the Uncle Floyd Show, and we did a duet. And I remember I missed his hotel for a second and went around the building. I was about 3 minutes late. He said, "Mr. Wright, you're 3 minutes late. If it was anyone else but you, I would refuse to go." But he was wonderful. But Richard, I'm going to tell you a little thing he told me. And he was quite religious, and he called everyone Mr. or Miss or Mrs. Remember, his wife was Miss Vicky. He married on Johnny Carson. But then he said, "Mr. Wright, do you ever do shows for free?" I said, "Once in a while." He said, "You should never do that because they'll take advantage of you and they won't respect you." And he said this was the very profound thing he said to me. He said, "Remember, God doesn't want you to be stupid." Isn't that interesting? In other words, don't confuse kindness with being taken by someone. Isn't that interesting? I always remember that. Very profound.
You became, friends, with so many of these. Joey Faye.
Yes.
I think I have a photograph here that I will bring up. How did the two of you actually meet?
Do you know? Let me think how I met Joey. I think he was in a store in New Jersey.
Of this
And
picture.
I said, Joey. And he said, oh, you know me from the Fruit of the Loom. I said, no, I know you from your whole career. You're wonderful. He was a top-notch second banana in burlesque. And then went on to Broadway. I've got a couple of funny stories about Joey. And just the nicest man. And we became a team, more or less, for about 6 years at the end of his career, doing Slowly I Turned and Flugel Street and other classic burlesque bits. And just the nicest man. He was like a little boy, like his innocent soul. Even from the world of burlesque, he was like an innocent soul. And he often worked with Phil Silvers. They were in Minsky's together. And it's a funny thing. Joey said he was so shy that he couldn't ask the girls out to a date. But Phil would stand them up, and then they would go out with him. If they stood up, the girl, he stood up. Phil Silvers would stand up the girl, and he would go out with them then. He was too shy to ask them himself. But I've got to tell you a couple of funny stories about Joey. Joey was Joseph A. Palladino, Italian.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to get a job one summer at the same camp where Moss Hart worked as a young man every summer in the theater camp. And they were lined up, and Joey was Italian, so he was so nervous about that. So he lined up. The guy said, next, signing people up for the summer. He said, name. And Joey was so nervous, he slowly said, Joseph Fay. Next. He became Joseph Fay, Joey Fay.
It's funny how that happens.
Yes. So he was Joey Fay from then on, and he got the job, I think. But another funny thing, when he was going to be, when they were going to start the Bilko show, do you remember that, Phil Silvers?
Of course, yes.
Because he was with Phil and Top Banana, and before that, High Button Shoes on Broadway with Phil. And they were old friends, of course. And he said, Phil, this Bilko show is starting. I mean, is there something for me in the show? He said, listen, don't talk to Nat Hiken, like a creator and producer. I'll handle it, Joey. Don't worry, you're in. So he said, yeah, Phil, but you're in. Don't talk to Nat. I'll handle it. So weeks went by, and you know how it is in the trades and all. Shooting soon, you know. Sergeant Bilko. You'll Never Get Rich was the name of it, I think. The Phil Silvers show. And Joey was getting nervous. You know, we all need work. So he was saying, Phil, he called Phil. Phil, I'm seeing there's no mention of me. Don't worry, you're in. But finally they started shooting, and Joey wasn't in. But then he called Nat himself, Nat Hiken. And he said, Nat, Phil told me that I was in. What happened? He said, you were in, Joey. But to tell you the truth, Harvey called me. Harvey, it's escaping me. But he played Barbella. He said he called me. His wife is expecting a baby. He's broke. He needs the work so bad he begged me. That's the role you were going to play, Joey, Barbella. But I had to go to Harvey. Isn't this funny? His last name's escaping me. A famous comic actor.
Corman?
What's that?
Harvey Korman?
No, not Harvey Korman. Do you remember the Beach Pictures? He played the tough motorcycle comedic character.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of it now. Harvey, somebody will remember.
Somebody
Your audience will remember in a second.
Somebody's going to tell us in a moment.
Yes. I used to remember such things. But anyway, I mentioned that story to Mickey Freeman, who was a friend, who was a member of the cast. You remember Mickey? And he said, no, that never happened. So who knows? You know, they show us the stories, Richard. You never know for sure.
Depending on who you talk to.
That's right. And one more little thing about Joey.
Yeah.
One time he just matter-of-factly threw something out at me. I said, what? He said, yeah, Benny Hill asked for me. I said, what? He said, Benny Hill asked for me. What do you mean Benny Hill asked for you? He said he's going to do some shops in New York for the first time, some scenes in New York City, some comedy bits, and he asked for me. See, Benny was a big fan of American burlesque. So, of course, he knew Joey. It was well-known Second Banana.
Mm-hmm.
And he did that. He just thought, it's a job, he asked for me. And I've seen those clips, and Joey was great in there with Benny Hill. They worked well together, little bits of business. And I have to tell you, that reminds me of something else quickly here, Richard. Joey had little mini strokes, and his eyes were so at the end. And he was walking a little slow. but we'd be in the wings, ready to go on. And some of the people said, "Is Joey okay?" I said, "Just watch. Is he going to be all right? Just watch." Talk about that magic we were talking about. The minute he got out there, boom, like a young man. Show business magic.
Harvey Lembeck.
That's it. Harvey
Yeah.
Lembeck.
Thank
you.
you, Luke. Thank you, Luke Johnson.
Thank you, Luke. I can sleep tonight.
Yes. Thank you. So
okay. So those are little show business stories.
No, and I've seen that happen. I was, Carol Channing, I've seen her where she could barely set up. She was so tired.
Yes.
And the moment she would walk out on that stage, it would be like 25, 30 years earlier.
It's amazing.
It's that spotlight hits them and they're off and running. It's just amazing. You've been, both of us, you've been around a while. You've seen a lot of changes in this business.
Yes.
What are the changes that you've seen that you have embraced? And what are the changes that you've seen that you really go, I really miss what it was?
Yes, I don't want to disparage any.
No, we don't go there. However, I celebrate.
Oh no, I do too. And I'm not going to despair, but I'll tell you what I do think. We alluded to it before. With the things I embrace, I love the energy of today. And I'm happy to know many young people, directors and writers and producers, that seem to get a kick out of me for some reason, I guess. But I think it's longevity. Suddenly you're a commodity. Maybe because I have one foot in another time, maybe. Maybe that's suddenly, like I was as a young man, interested in these old timers. Mm-hmm. Fascinated by them. So maybe it's something like that, but it's a wonderful energy and there are many opportunities.
Excuse me for interrupting, but do you think that today's generation of kids have the same appreciation for that era that you and I have?
Some of them do. In fact, my friend Bob Greenberg and I are going to be in a little short of a young man, a young friend, Shane Fleming, who loves the old stuff. In fact, he used to be with Robert Osborne when he was a little boy, helping select, commenting on his favorite films, and he would wear a straw hat. And he was a little boy. He's a freshman now in college, and he's asked Bob and me. I used to tutor. I better get that right. Asked Bob and me, one of my many sidelines, to support my acting habit. And so, as I say, the freshness of what's to come. I knew so many old timers that it's refreshing too. Those two worlds of the up and coming, and many of them do like that old time stuff. And even if they aren't aware of it, the fact that they sort of get a kick out of me a little, maybe I represent that to them, whether they realize it or not. I don't know, because I have a link with it, even though I wasn't actually back then. Mm-hmm. I have a link with it, as you do, Richard. Mm-hmm. We both do. And that's something we're very happy about, I'm sure.
Well, I came to New York in 1979, and there used to be a place called the Hartley House. Did you ever go there?
No, but I've heard of it.
That's where I met Tiny Tim. Oh. And on Sunday afternoons, I met Tessie O'Shea.
Oh, yes, Tessie. She was great.
She was great. But these vaudevillians that were still around and performing would all go there and perform. And there used to be a place, it was torn down, unfortunately, when they bulldozed the theaters for...
I was part of that, Save the Theaters.
I was too.
I just realized it's 40 years this spring.
Yes.
40 years, 1982.
The Piccadilly Hotel was bulldozed, but they used to have the Ziegfeld Society, the Ziegfeld girls. I used to go on, I was 18-year-old boy, would go, it tells you a lot about me, and meet with these Ziegfeld girls.
Yes.
And sit and have tea with them on Wednesday afternoons. And I would just worship at their feet to hear their stories about Florenz Ziegfeld. Yes. And, and meet Winnie Shaw, who introduced the song Lullaby of Broadway.
That's right, in the film. They did that great silhouette, that close-up of her with the spotlight. That was wonderful.
know, of
They were
all
great
the people
days.
that you've had the chance to work with, and what are some of the life lessons that you've learned from some of these great iconic people that you've worked with, some that you've mentioned today, that you've carried these life lessons through out your life and career?
Well, they all contributed so much to my life and things they stood for and so forth. I remember Joe Smith of Smith and Dale, who was like a grandfather to me. He once said, Michael, never insult another performer. Keep your feelings to yourself. Never insult another performer. Isn't that interesting?
Wonderful.
You remember Smith and Dale?
Of
Neil
course.
Simon loosely based the Sunshine Boys on
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
They never argued like that. Do you want me to do just a little? I do that in my act, a little.
Oh,
Of
please, by all
Dr.
means.
Cronkite. I'll do just a moment of it. Joe goes, to the doctor's there, Charlie. Are you a doctor? I'm a doctor. I'm dubious. Glad to know you, Mr. Dubious. Are you married? Yes or no? What do you mean, yes or no? I am, but I wish I wasn't. You see, I am my wife's step-husband. He stepped out, I stepped in. Things like that. I do that in my act.
And nobody does it better.
Oh, and Joey, could I do one more little thing?
Of course, by all means.
Joey Fay was well known for sneezes, and he taught me how to sneeze, stage sneezes. I don't want to get the lens wet here, but this was a $5 sneeze he showed me. $5 sneeze. That's a $5 sneeze. Here's a $25 sneeze. That's a $5, a $25. Here's the $100 sneeze. You ready? That's the $100 sneeze. So I learned that from Joey. So those are the things I picked up along the way. And that and 10 cents will get me nowhere. No, but it's wonderful to have those things.
So are you currently working on something now? What's next?
Yes. A friend of mine, Owen Klein, who is a fine writer and director. We're doing a film which is as of yet untitled, which is now in post-production. I think it may be released later this year. I'm not sure, but it's in post-production now, a feature film. And A24 is the distributor. They distribute a lot of those little films that win awards, and not so little. I think they did the tragedy of Macbeth just recently.
Wow.
With Denzel and Fran. So, you never know. I may make a living yet. You never know, Richard.
Well, we keep hoping. We're working on this. Well, I want to give something away. We're going to give a couple of CDs away, and I'm going to show everyone how this is going to work here. I'm going to we're going to share the screen here. Let me do this here. So just bear with me, everyone. We're going to we're going to share this here. So the giveaway word today is beauty. My hands are free. All you need to do is use the hashtag beauty. We're going to give away 2 CDs and the Richard Skipper Celebrates mug. So you can take me home with you. While we're waiting for you all to use the hashtag beauty, I am my homage to James Lipton inside the Actors Studio.
Yes.
I've got some questions that I'm going to ask you, Michael.
Okay.
What is the highest high that you've ever experienced in your career?
I think probably, all these people I knew and loved, all these old timers, was wonderful and still working today. But I think probably working with Joey was such an honor because his history in burlesque and Broadway and film and television, and he was such a nice man. And working with such a pro like that. And a gentleman wrote an article about the many straight men of Joey Fay, all the people that worked with him. Zura Mostel was, of course, Phil Silvers, so many. Jack Albertson for a while.
Wow.
Just great people. I'm so humble. I certainly don't rise to that level, but just to be in that list and just to be his friend was probably the greatest honor. That was a wonderful time for me.
That's wonderful. Is there a memory that stands out for you of a decision that you made, where there's a fork in the road, where you went one direction and you feel looking back that it really changed the trajectory of your career?
I do. Um, as I say, right from the beginning, there was no doubt who I was, a performer, right from the very beginning. However, there came that time when I was a young man and I had to decide. I never searched my soul so deeply, which is not easy to do. Do I have enough? Am I kidding myself? Am I good enough really to pursue this? Do I genuinely have something to offer? Is this really I mean, it may be who I am, but am I any good? That's a very tough thing to search your own soul about.
Mm-hmm.
And I determine, not that I think I'm the greatest thing on earth by any means, but I genuinely have something unique to offer, I think. And so that was a very big decision in my life,
Wow.
Not that it would have changed, but I had to prove to myself that I had something to offer.
Well, I can say for all of us that we're the better for it. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Richard.
Do you make New Year's resolutions? And
I
if
do
so,
every year. I do every year.
have
And I
you
break
stuck
them
with
about the afternoon of the January 1st. But I try not to think bad about anybody. I mean, it sounds like Pollyanna, how boring. But I try not to think of anyone badly or say anything about anybody. That's my year every year. As I said, I don't always keep it, but I try anyhow.
Mm-hmm. Well,
As I
trying
said,
is a good start.
I don't want to be Pollyannish,
Well,
but I figure it only hurts us, when we have that in our heart, bad feelings.
well, you pretty much have already answered this next question, which was the kind of relationship that you had with your parents, and were they supportive of your career goals? And it sounds like they were.
They were, as I said, concerned
Mm-hmm.
and worried, knowing how tough the world is and how it's funny. I've discussed this with friends that we sort of have a double whammy. We have to meet the same needs as everyone else in the world, the same worldly needs, but yet in a very difficult profession. It's sort of like a double whammy in a way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think you've already answered this next question, but name someone that you haven't mentioned, a person that you really have enjoyed working with in this business that you haven't mentioned already.
Oh boy. Well, all of these people so much. Danny Curtis, Uncle Floyd. I was on a show with Jim Monaco. He's a great guy. I still work with Floyd occasionally, live shows. It has stopped for a while, I guess, but he brings me in sometimes, and he's a great performer. I think he's better than he's ever been. He's just so seasoned, and I learned a lot from him. He would know when to bring me on. I would do like Jack Benny or sing a song or something, and he would know how to exactly the moment to bring me in. If he went over big with a piano song or comedy bit, he knew don't bring in Michael now. In his mind, I mean, perfect showbiz timing. You understand these kinds of things, Richard.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, a more gentle song, then I'll bring Michael on. It's not fair to do you know what I mean? It's just perfect. So all of them are a pleasure to work with, all these different performers, the real pros and it's just wonderful. That's all.
That's great. What was the greatest advice that you ever got from your dad?
I remember when I was a little boy, as corny as this sounds too. I remember when I was a little boy and he said, I live on a dead end street here and the Raritan Bay is down the street. And we used to play down there. And when I was very little, he said, did you go down to the beach? I said, no, Dad, I didn't. But I did,
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Michael, don't you ever lie. Don't ever lie. And that was a firm, I don't think he gave me a little, in those days, they would give you a little whatever on the backside there, but I don't think he did. He just looked at me very seriously and said that, and I remember that. And it's not a good idea to lie, really,
No. That's a deal breaker for me. Now I'm all about celebrating. So part of this question, no names, please.
No.
But have you ever met a celebrity and found that they were much kinder or maybe ruder than you expected? And if they were the latter, no names, please.
No names. Yes, that's happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
One time there was this talk show host. I used to go making the rounds once again. He had a show in the city. You could be a member of the audience kind of thing. Whenever I wanted to warm up in the cold days,
Mm-hmm.
I would go and sit there during the show. And it was interesting. You would see people, guests and so forth. And he seemed kind of brusque on television, I thought. But seeing him in person, he was a very nice man, very kind and nice. And conversely,
well, that's a name that I think you should mention, because if he, the fact that he was nicer in person, who would that be?
that was Dick Cavett. He used to have a PBS show after his ABC over in 11th, I think, or 10th, I forget, I think 11th Avenue, in his Channel 13 studio there.
That's good.
He was very nice. Not that he seemed brusque on the air, but, sort of cerebral and
yes, of course. Yes.
caustic jokes and things a little. But he was very, very nice. And contrary to that, and I won't mention name, people that I remember, a couple that I spoke to, tried to speak show business to, and they just weren't interested and weren't very nice. And so they shall remain nameless. But
well, I always like to say in those moments, maybe they were having a bad day.
That's true. That's why I don't hold a grudge, because it could be.
Mm-hmm. That's the way I look at it. Yes. What is the best single piece of advice that you ever received in your profession?
I think someone told me, even when you're very tired, summon up energy somehow. Summon up, and I call it artificial energy or synthetic energy, where you really are running very low, but you have to come up with. The audience isn't aware that you're tired or not feeling well. But you were talking about Carol Channing. I don't know if she ever missed a performance. Did she? She had the best ethics.
Well, the story is that she got food poisoning when she was in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Oh.
And when she called Mr. Merrick, she never called him David. It was Mr. Merrick.
Yes.
And she called him to say that she was missing that performance. His response was, well, Carol, if you're going to miss a performance, Kalamazoo is the place to do it. So I've got one last question.
Okay.
But before I do this, everyone, this is your last chance to win these prizes today. #beauty. Do it fast. We're about to do the drawing. And the question is, I asked about the biggest high that you ever had in your career. I want to ask, what was the lowest low that you ever had in your career and how you got through it?
Yes, I've been fortunate. There's never been a time when I haven't had something ahead of me. Not that I worked all the time, but since I was that little kid, there hasn't been ever a time where I don't have a show ahead of me sometime or someplace. So it wasn't so much that. Let's see now, the lowest low. I do get very upset. You were talking about the performer's nightmare. That's not the lowest low, of course, but I think something in real life, a couple of times I tried to think of, and it's not really the low I think you mean, but if I started thinking while I'm acting, oh, I didn't buy milk tonight. Oh, I forgot to, or I didn't do that or that. And suddenly the other part of my brain completely went up on the lines there, So that's not so much a low as a frightening thing. And I do regret the unprofessionalism of those moments, or forgetting, or skipping ahead a page or something. That's frightening.
Yeah.
And finding your way back. But that's kind of that sort of low, but not so much career-wise. I've been very lucky. Very lucky.
I think that one person has entered. We're going to find out who this one person is right now. So let's see who the winner is. I think that it is Pam Stubbs is our winner.
Wonderful.
So Pam, I think I have your address, and I will send that information to you. So once again, Pam, thank you so much. This has been a real treat for me, Michael.
Me too,
And
Richard.
I want to say, Chip, thank you, thank you, thank you for making this suggestion. Don't go anywhere for a minute, Michael. I want to thank everybody who took the time to tune in. I know that you're all busy and you could have been anywhere else, especially now that theaters are starting to open again. You could have been at a matinee today or out shopping or doing anything. So those of you who chose to spend the last hour with us, thank you. If this was your first time here at Richard Skipper Celebrates, my hope is that it will not be your last. Please, if it's your first time, please subscribe. We are fast approaching 400 episodes. Check out the over 400 other artists that I've celebrated on this show. My goal is to celebrate artists and their body of worth. Check them out, not only here, but on their other platforms that they're doing. Leave a comment here on YouTube and share this with your friends if you don't mind. Let other people know about this channel. And I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Yes. Go to your Facebook friends list and go to the first name that pops up and reach out with a phone call. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, but a phone call. And let that person know what they mean to you. Just over the last few weeks, I've lost a few friends. And once those people have passed on, I've seen it today where people have posted about a loss. And I see everyone go on and post their favorite picture of that person or their favorite memory of that person. And I go, wouldn't it have been nice if those photographs and those memories had been posted a week before so that those people could have seen the outpouring of love? So we don't have tomorrow promised to us. So it's important that we take the time to do so now. Michael, I want to tell you, I appreciate you. I'm telling you now. So
thank you, Richard.
Do take the time to do so. As my dear friend David Friedman always says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And I always say, if you're going to go out in a boat, make sure you bring a skipper along. Now, Michael, I'm going to leave the screen and I'm going to give you the final word. Anything you want to say to everyone about anything that we talked about today that you want to build upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to anyone who's watching right now, don't worry about how to end it. As soon as you say goodbye, I will end the show. So thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you'll be back tomorrow night at 5 o'clock, as I will be joined by 6 o'clock, as I will be joined by Kasira McKee, and we will be doing the Let That Go show. Very interesting show planned tomorrow night. So please tune in. And Michael, thanks for all you do. Thank you. And Michael, it's all yours.
Well, dear friends, I have a very simple philosophy of life, if I can't buy them in the store. Very simple philosophy of life. Very simple, much like myself. Do the very best you can, and then don't worry about it too much. God bless you. Thank you all very much. Goodbye.